Welcome to the debate. I mean, picture this for a second. An alarm goes off in a corporate security operations center, right? And in literally milliseconds, the automated defense systems isolate a compromised server.
Just completely locked down.
Exactly. They block a malicious payload, they slam the door on an intruder before a human analyst even has time to blink. It feels like a total victory.
Oh, sure. High fives all around in the SOC.
Right. But here is the catch. Those automated systems have absolutely no idea that the code was sent by a foreign intelligence agency that is, preparing the groundwork for a massive coordinated attack on the energy grid. And today, that tension is what we are dissecting.
Yeah, because every major organization on the planet faces just a relentless, massive influx of data as they try to predict, prevent, and respond to cyber attacks.
Which brings us to the core of our discussion, drawn directly from foundational texts on modern intelligence methodologies. In today's security landscape, which intelligence paradigm actually provides the most critical foundation for an organization's defense?
Right. Because you have a choice. Do you build your house on technical data or human context?
And I firmly believe that the highly structured, automated, and technical realm of cyber threat intelligence, or CTI, is the indispensable bedrock. I represent the view that when you are under attack, you do not need context. You need hard, machine-readable evidence to stop the bleeding.
Well, I approach this from the exact opposite direction. I represent the view that open source intelligence, OSINT, the broad, context-rich analysis of public data, media, and global behavioral trends, is the true foundation.
Even in the middle of a breach?
Especially before the breach even happens. Because if you only rely on automated technical systems, you are operating entirely blind to the strategic and operational realities that dictate exactly who is targeting you and why.
Look, let's start with the reality of the threat landscape. To understand why CTI has to be the primary foundation of security, we have to look at the sheer velocity of modern attacks.
Velocity is a problem, I'll give you that.
It's the only problem that matters when you're getting hit. We are not dealing with a lone hacker typing furiously on a keyboard in a basement anymore. We are dealing with automated exploitation at scale. Look at the IBM data, right? The exploitation of technical vulnerabilities accounts for roughly 47% of all attacks.
Sure, the initial vectors are automated.
Nearly half of all breaches happen because an automated script found a technical flaw and leveraged it at machine speed. You cannot fight a machine speed exploit with a human reading a geopolitical news report.
I don't disagree that speed is a factor. But speed without direction is just panic.
But CTI provides the direction through rigorous, actionable evidence. CTI combines an organization's internal telemetry with technical indicators of compromise, IOCs. We're talking about the tangible, physical artifacts of an attack.
You mean like malicious IP addresses, domain names, file hashes?
Exactly. And the beauty of CTI is how it handles these artifacts. It operates on standardized, machine-readable formats. Take STIX, for example, Structured Threat Information Expression.
Right, the language standard.
Let's break down how that actually works for the listener. Before STIX, if a cybersecurity vendor discovered a new piece of malware, they might publish a PDF report.
Yeah, and a poor junior analyst had to read it.
Right. A human analyst would have to read that PDF, manually copy the bad IP addresses, and paste them into their firewall's block list. It was slow, it was incredibly prone to human error, but STIX standardizes that threat data into a structured format. And then TAXII, the transport protocol, automatically sends that data directly to your Security Information and Event Management System, your SIEM.
Like a universal translator.
Precisely. A threat discovered by a server in Tokyo instantly updates a firewall in New York without a human ever touching it. CTI is like the body's automated immune system. It recognizes the exact signature of a pathogen and immediately neutralizes it.
That immune system analogy is actually perfect for explaining why CTI is fundamentally flawed if it's acting alone.
How so? It literally cures the infection.
Because what happens when an immune system lacks the context to understand what it's looking at? You get allergies. You get an autoimmune response.
Okay, that's a bit dramatic.
No, it's accurate. The system sees harmless pollen, misidentifies it as a deadly virus, and shuts down your airway. That is exactly what happens with automated CTI systems devoid of human context. They generate a paralyzing volume of false positives.
Well, tuning the SIM to reduce false positives is just a standard operational procedure. Every security architect knows that.
But you cannot tune it without OSINT. Look, automated systems rely heavily on indicator-based analytics, but indicators expire so rapidly now. An advanced persistent threat actor might compromise an IP address, use it to launch an attack for exactly 2 hours, and then completely abandon it.
And the CTI feed flags it.
Yes, your automated threat intelligence platform ingests that malicious IP, and your SIEM blocks it. But the attacker has already moved on. By tomorrow, that same IP address has been reassigned by the hosting provider to a local bakery.
I mean, that's just the churn of the internet.
Right. But now your automated immune system is proudly blocking employees from ordering bagels because it has no contextual awareness that the threat has passed. It just sees a bad IP.
Okay, but the frameworks we use in CTI have evolved way beyond just blocking static IP addresses. We don't just collect file hashes anymore. We map behavior.
You're talking about mapping TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures.
Yes, exactly. The MITRE ATT&CK framework is the de facto standard for this across the industry. It organizes adversary behavior into a matrix. It looks at the why of a specific tactical action, like a script trying to escalate its privileges on a server, and the how, the specific technique used to do it.
It's a great framework.
It is a highly structured, evidence-based matrix of behavior. It solves the bagel problem.
I agree MITRE ATT&CK is brilliant. But where do you think the descriptions of those techniques actually come from? The matrix doesn't just spontaneously generate from firewall logs.
It comes from threat intelligence.
It comes from OSINT. The behavioral profiles in MITRE are synthesized from incident response reports, technical preprints, vendor blogs, and public analyses. They are heavily derived from open source intelligence.
I wouldn't say heavily.
CTI is inherently reactive. It is looking at the exhaust pipe of the adversary's vehicle after the engine is already running. OSINT addresses the engine itself. Before a technical sensor is ever triggered, an adversary has a motivation. There are foreign budget allocations, hacktivist manifestos posted on public forums, and shifts in global alliances.
Wait. So let me make sure I understand the practical application of your argument here. You are saying that a security team should dedicate its highly limited budget to having analysts scour dark web forums and read foreign news instead of automating their actual defenses?
I am saying that understanding the TTPs through OSINT isn't just about knowing why you're attacked. It's the only reliable way to know who is attacking you. And that pivots us directly into the attribution problem.
Attribution.
Yes. Identifying the nation-state or the organized crime syndicate behind an intrusion is something CTI struggles with immensely, precisely because it only looks at the technical exhaust.
That's just not true. CTI tracks attribution through forensic evidence, hard data.
Forensic evidence that is incredibly easy to forge. Advanced threat actors deliberately obfuscate their technical trails. They use proxies, they lease commercial VPNs, but more importantly, they actively employ false flags.
Are you suggesting they intentionally leave breadcrumbs just to mess with automated systems? Come on.
Absolutely they do. A Russian state-sponsored group will deliberately compile their malware during standard business hours in Pyongyang. They will intentionally insert variable names or code comments in Korean. They will route their attack through a compromised server in Brazil.
That's a very specific hypothetical.
But it happens. If you rely solely on the technical indicators, the CTI, your automated systems will confidently attribute the attack to North Korea. You will pass that intelligence to your executive board, and you will be completely, dangerously wrong.
And OSINT just magically solves this? You're reading tea leaves on a forum?
It doesn't use magic. It uses correlation. OSINT is uniquely suited to cut through false flags because it synthesizes public records, linguistic artifacts, and geopolitical realities. Let's say a technical attack occurs against a European energy grid, and the code looks North Korean.
Okay.
But OSINT analysts simultaneously detect a major shift in Russian public doctrine regarding critical infrastructure. At the same time, they monitor Russian-language hacktivist boards, aligning their chatter with that exact state goal.
So you're guessing based on timing?
No, OSIN looks at the human and political incentives. It sees through the forged technical artifacts because it understands the broader strategic reality that the machine ignores.
I am extremely skeptical of that line of reasoning. I mean, you're placing immense, almost reckless faith in the integrity of public data. Now, if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, well, if OSIN gives us the human context, why not just trust it? Here's why. Disinformation.
Disinformation is a factor, yes, but
It is not just a factor, it is a psychological operation. State actors and extremist groups actively and aggressively weaponize public channels to manipulate exactly the kind of analysts you are describing. Governments intentionally disseminate false narratives through news outlets, social media, and even manipulate public geospatial data.
they do. But an experienced analyst,
If your OSN analysts are reading public forums to figure out who is attacking them, they are reading exactly what the adversary wants them to read. CTI completely bypasses this vulnerability because it ignores the politics of Twitter and focuses strictly on the physics of the network. We rely on structured analytical models like the Diamond model of intrusion analysis.
but even the diamond model requires human interpretation to be useful.
It requires interpretation, but it anchors every single assumption in hard, observable evidence. Let me explain exactly how the Diamond model works in practice, because this is crucial. It maps an event across 4 points: the adversary, their capabilities, the infrastructure they use, and the victim. It is all about the pivot.
Right. Pivoting from one known data point to discover another.
Exactly. Let's say your automated defense flags a novel piece of malware. That malware is your capability. A CTI analyst looks at the code and sees it as hard-coded to communicate with a very specific, obscure IP address. That IP is your infrastructure.
Tracking so far.
You just pivoted from capability to infrastructure based purely on mathematical fact, not a blog post. Then you query that infrastructure and find out that same IP address was used 3 months ago to attack a defense contractor, your victim. You pivot again. By connecting these hard technical dots, you identify a cluster of adversarial activity. You don't need to know the political motivation of the hacker to know exactly how they operate and how to block them. That is how you build a reliable defense.
That is how you build a defense for an IT technician, but that is not how you build a defense for an executive board. We have to look at the strategic value of intelligence here.
The board wants the network to stay online.
A chief information security officer sitting in a boardroom doesn't care about the intricacies of a STIX transport protocol or a cluster designator in the Diamond model. They need to prioritize business risk. If the company's planning an acquisition of a semiconductor manufacturer in Taiwan, the board needs to know if that move makes them a target for a specific state intelligence service. That level of predictive, strategic intelligence relies entirely on OSINT.
Executives consume strategic intelligence, sure, but the day-to-day survival of the network.
The survival of the network depends on anticipating the threat before the malware is even compiled. There is profound historical precedent for this. Whenever we look back at major intelligence failures, the overwhelming conclusion has been a desperate need for open source analysis, not more technical data.
You're talking about the national intelligence level now, not corporate.
The principles are the same. After the September 11 attacks, the 9/11 Commission specifically recommended the creation of an open source intelligence agency. In 2005, the Iraq Intelligence Commission recommended the creation of an open source directorate at the CIA. The intelligence community realized that over-relying on clandestine, highly technical data was causing them to miss the glaring strategic context playing out in the open.
I am familiar with the history, but again, the intelligence community operates on a totally different mandate than a corporate enterprise.
But the mechanism of predictive analysis is exactly the same. Consider the classic example from the Foreign Broadcast Monitoring Service during World War II.
Oh, the orange prices?
Yes, the orange prices. Allied intelligence analysts noticed that the public price of oranges in Paris was skyrocketing. Why? Because oranges were transported from the south of France by train. If the price of oranges spiked in the Parisian markets, it meant the trains weren't arriving.
Right, because of the bombings.
Exactly. It meant the Allied bombings of the railway bridges were successful. They didn't need a spy tapping a telegraph wire. They just correlated open market economic data. That is OSINT. It is the ability to look at seemingly disconnected publicly available data points, and extract unparalleled projective power. You simply can't get that level of strategic foresight from a SIEM firing off automated alerts.
Okay, that is a phenomenal historical anecdote, and I concede the elegance of it. But we can talk about the beauty of OSINT and orange prices all day long. The reality is that an enterprise in today's landscape is not fighting World War II. They are fighting the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They are fighting compliance and liability.
Oh, compliance is just a baseline checklist. It is not a holistic intelligence strategy.
Compliance is the law. And the modern regulatory frameworks increasingly demand the exact kind of automated technical rigor that only CTI can provide. Let's look at the friction this causes in the real world. CISA maintains the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, the KEV.
Right, the mandatory patch list.
This is a massive, constantly updating list of technical vulnerabilities that threat actors are actively using in the wild. Federal agencies, and by extension anyone doing business with them, are subjected to binding operational directives. If a new vulnerability drops into the KEV catalog, you might have exactly 14 days to remediate it.
Yes, patching is a legal requirement, but knowing what to patch first when you have thousands of vulnerable systems?
Knowing what to patch requires an automated pipeline. You have thousands of common vulnerabilities and exposures, CVEs, published constantly. You cannot satisfy these stringent, time-bound, deeply technical regulatory mandates by having a team of analysts reading foreign newspapers and looking for geopolitical trends.
Nobody is saying ignore the CVEs.
You satisfy them by subscribing to continuous automated CTI feeds that map the CVEs directly against your internal network telemetry, instantly updating your intrusion detection systems, and prioritizing the patch rollout based on technical exposure. The HIPAA security rule, NIST frameworks, they all mandate continuous vulnerability monitoring based on technical realities. The legal environment mandates machine-readable precision.
But the very regulatory frameworks you are citing, including NIST, explicitly mandate maintaining ongoing awareness of emerging threats through broader intelligence sharing and threat landscape analysis. And this is where we really have to look at the mechanics of how intelligence actually circulates. Look at the intelligence cycle itself.
The 5 phases?
Right. It is a continuous, 5-phase process: planning and direction, collection, processing, analysis, and dissemination. CTI is magnificent at the processing phase of technical data, but the very first phase, planning and direction, requires a human stakeholder to say, based on our business model, I need intelligence on this specific geopolitical threat landscape. OSINT informs that direction.
I mean, sure.
And in the analysis phase, where raw data is transformed into actual intelligence, you have to have human interpretation.
I have never suggested that human interpretation is completely without value. I just think it's secondary to the technical blocks.
It is not just valuable. It is the defining factor that separates raw data from intelligence. Even the most sophisticated threat intelligence platforms require analysts to verify the output. If an automated system identifies a bizarre anomaly in network traffic, the machine cannot tell you what it means.
It tells you it's an anomaly.
But it takes an analyst armed with OSINT regarding new decentralized hacker methodologies or, recent public vulnerability disclosures on a grade literature forum to determine if it is a novel zero-day exploit or just a misconfigured internal server dropping packets.
I think we are actually circling toward a practical reality of how these operations have to be architected.
I think we might be. The rigid binary really starts to break down when you look at a functioning security operations center.
If I summarize my position, it remains that cyber threat intelligence, with its structured, evidence-based methodologies, must be the core foundation of a robust defense. We discussed the MITRE attack framework and the diamond model, because they rely on observable technical indicators to disrupt the adversary's actual capabilities.
Right.
Without the machine-readable precision of sticks and taxi feeds, you are entirely defenseless against the sheer volume and velocity of modern automated attacks. You just cannot manually block 10,000 malicious IPs a second.
And to summarize my view, I maintain that open source intelligence provides the crucial strategic umbrella needed to navigate the threat landscape. Relying solely on technical artifacts leaves you vulnerable to sophisticated false flags and leaves your executive board completely blind to the business risks of their decisions. OSINT is the discipline that answers the critical questions of who is attacking you, why they're doing it, and what their ultimate objective is, long before they ever touch your perimeter.
Yet, listening to your points regarding false positives in CTI and weighing my own warnings about disinformation in OSINT, we both have to acknowledge a point of convergence here. The most effective intelligence programs simply cannot afford to be purists. They must utilize a hybrid model.
Absolutely. The hybrid approach is really the only sustainable architecture. You deploy CTI's automated systems and threat intelligence platforms for the large-scale, machine-speed processing. You let the machines fight the machines at the perimeter. They handle the velocity.
Exactly. And simultaneously, you depend on OSINT-informed human analysts to provide the contextual interpretation. The CTI provides the what and the how, mapping the infrastructure and blocking the exploit, while the open-source analysts provide the who and the why, cutting through the false flags to deliver strategic assessments to the board.
Examining this tension between machine-readable technical indicators and broad open-source context really reveals the deep complexity of modern threat analysis. It is not just about installing a better firewall. It is about building a comprehensive epistemology of how we know what we know about our adversaries.
Well said.
I highly suggest our listeners explore the frameworks we discussed, MITRE ATT&CK, the Diamond Model, and the intelligence cycle further in the source materials to see the mechanics for themselves.
It is an endlessly fascinating ecosystem. And we will end the discussion here, leaving you to form your own conclusion about which discipline truly anchors security without declaring one definitively superior.
It always comes back to whether you are trying to win the tactical firefight or understand the broader war.
It really does. We started by imagining the modern Security Operations Center as the high-tech bridge of a battleship, scanning the horizon with incredibly fast automated radar. What this debate shows us is that while you absolutely need that automated radar to survive the incoming missiles, you still desperately need a human being to step outside, read the sky, and understand why the storm was brewing in the first place. Until next time,